Hi there.
Hey, Caroline. Hey, everybody.
Class one. Hi, everybody. Welcome to 10 wonderful classes on purpose in the Enneagram. This is exciting.
Yeah, finally. I've been looking forward to this. This date's been glowing in my diary, Caroline. So I'm glad we're here finally.
And really, it is a summation, a way to honor your new book, too. This
Yeah,
really speaks of a wonderful subject of which you are an expert.
Caroline, thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's just a complete joy also to do this program with you. And I'm very, very grateful that we're doing this, taking this journey together, along with so many people who I know are also already hugely dedicated to their purpose. So I'm excited to see what unfolds.
What is life without purpose, Robert? I mean,
Yeah,
it
I
is
know.
the blind journey through. Anyway, I'm going to let you start and I'll see you at the end.
It's such a great question, though, Caroline, and thank you for the question. And I remember as soon as you asked the question, I had a flash of like as a young child, like I really, that was the question for me, that sense of, well, what is the purpose of life? Yeah. And that is definitely what we're going to be exploring together. So welcome to Purpose and the Enneagram. And thank you so much for joining us for this 10-part series on living a purpose-centered life. And I want you just to take those words in for a moment. Purpose-centered life. Yeah. This isn't about purpose on the periphery. This isn't about purpose, if you like, on the uh, it just on the outside of our life, on the outskirts of life. This is very much at the center of our life. Imagine beginning every day of your life with a meditation, a prayer, a spiritual practice that really helped you to live your life on purpose. And by that, I mean, not just living with the intention of a purposeful life, but also actually fitting into a greater purpose that infuses the whole of the universe and that connects us up as well to the whole of the universe. I really do believe there is a purpose in having a purpose. And actually, I think for us, having a purpose is genuinely what helps us to connect, firstly, to the heart of who we are. But after that, it helps us to connect to the community of humanity, because after all, I do believe humanity has a shared purpose. And then after that, having a purpose really helps us to connect to something infinite, universal, cosmic, even. So I am delighted to be your host for this journey. And I'm also very grateful that we have Caroline joining us and offering us spiritual direction and mentoring along the way. The central theme for this whole series is purpose. And together we're going to conduct an inquiry into really our relationship with purpose. Where am I at in my life right now, in my relationship with purpose? And what does this mean for me personally, but also collectively? The model that we're going to be using is the Enneagram, which is both ancient and modern. It is one of the oldest systems of self-awareness that we have, dating back to over 2,500 years. The Enneagram symbol that we work with today, the earliest recording we have of it is in around 1305, but there have been many examples of the Enneagram symbol before that as well. Our journey is made up of 10 classes, 2 classes each week, on a Monday and a Wednesday. And for each class, we will run for around about 75 minutes to 90 minutes. Each class is recorded as live, and you can watch the replay at your convenience. And by the way, I'll be hopping on in between classes as well, just to sort of top you up with like a review of what's just happened, but also preparation for the class ahead. Bring a journal and a pen, because we are doing inner work together. This isn't just spiritual entertainment, and none of this stuff that we're going to be doing together works in theory. It only works in practice. And here in class 1, I'm going to be offering you an overview of our journey, also an introduction to the Enneagram and some of the initial ways we can all work with the Enneagram. And we will also really start our inquiry into living a purpose-centered life. After today's class, we will then take a class that each class will focus on the 9 points and personality types of the Enneagram. So in class 2, we will focus on point 1 and Ennea type 1. In class 3, it will be point 2 and Ennea type 2, and so on. I also just want to say that we have a great support team for you for our journey, and that includes Vince and David and Jim and Sahini and other people behind the scenes that are going to be doing everything to make sure that you have a smooth service from us throughout this journey together. So let's start by looking just briefly for now at the Enneagram. And this is our 3rd Enneagram program for the Parallel Reflection series. The first program Caroline and I did was Spiritual Growth in the Enneagram, and we gave you 10 action-packed classes on how to work with the Enneagram to support you on your spiritual path. After that, we gave you Love in the Enneagram, and we gave you 10 soul meditations on love as a spiritual path, love as your holy purpose, and love as the heart of activism. And now here we are with purpose and the Enneagram to complete the trilogy. So what is the Enneagram? The Enneagram, the word it's a compound word, Ennea meaning 9 and gramma meaning something written or drawn. The Enneagram is both an ancient and a modern symbol. The ancient Enneagram does go at least to 2,500 years back. Hard to tell exactly where it came from, because really there's a paperless trail, you can say, but it seems to be rooted very much more in the oral traditions of learning. So its origins are a mystery, but I think we can say that it began somewhere with the esoteric schools in ancient Egypt and Greece. The Enneagram is based upon the philosophy of Plato and Aristotle and Socrates. Plato said that God geometrizes continually. The entire universe is geometric. It is based on mathematics and a beautiful, precise design. Think about for a minute a pine cone. Such precision in the design of a pine cone. Think of a raspberry for a moment. You know, those duplets in every raspberry. You know, some Enneagram types get really interested in those little duplets in a raspberry, particularly type 5 on the Enneagram, by the way. Actually, they will want to maybe count how many duplets there are in a raspberry. And by the way, do you know that there's more than one variety of raspberry? There's many varieties of raspberry, actually. Or how about the geometry of a seashell or a galaxy, or even your physical body with its 9 gates, by the way. Take note of the number 9. But the body has 9 gates, doesn't it? And so we're tuning in here to a sense of a geometry that actually affects, influences, and can support us in our life. And it's important that we work with that geometry, by the way. The Enneagram is also based on the sacred mathematics of Pythagoras. Pythagoras said all is number. There is some thought that maybe it was Pythagoras who was the first person to draw the Enneagram. Oscar Ichazo, who helped to give us the modern Enneagram, which is an Enneagram of personality types, he called the Enneagram the 9th seal of Pythagoras. After that, we also see how the Enneagram was worked with by Plotinus. He was really one of the founders of Neoplatonism. One of his books is this one. It's a huge tome. Plotinus, the Enneads, and a massive book, fascinating to get lost in. It's really a study of the major principles of the universe. 54 texts divided into 9 groups. There's that number 9 again. We also see the Enneagram at work with Evagrius Ponticus and the Desert Fathers and Desert Mothers in the 3rd century AD. And after that, it makes its appearance in Sufi schools and mystical Judaism and so on. But you know, the Enneagram sort of came into the modern world via the enigmatic philosopher Mr. Gurdjieff, or Gurdjieff, depending on how you like to say his name. Now, it was P.D. Uspensky, a Russian philosopher, who I think of, by the way, as the Indiana Jones, really, of the movement. He was the one who traveled through Europe, India, Ceylon, and Egypt in search of ancient knowledge. He set off actually from St. Petersburg, and he basically writes it all up in a book called In Search of the Miraculous. In fact, when he came back from his first adventures, he gave lectures in St. Petersburg on In Search of the Miraculous. That was the title he gave his lectures. And he was really in search of wisdom schools, a consciousness that could support the world. And remember, this was at a time when the First World War, was happening. So there was this incredible sense of disillusionment with humanity. Like, let's look at what we're doing to ourselves. And there was this war happening. There was this sense of, no, there's got to be a better way. And basically, Uspensky and Gurdjieff studied for 10 years together. And then this book came out, which was 1949. There is a summary, really, of many conversations between Uspensky and Gurdjieff, and also an introduction to the Enneagram. In fact, in this book, if I can find a moment here, let me read to you what Gurdjieff's saying. Gurdjieff says, man's possibilities are very great. You cannot conceive even a shadow of what man is capable of attaining, but nothing can be attained in sleep. In the consciousness of a sleeping man, his illusions, his dreams are mixed with reality. He lives in a subjective world, and he can never escape from it. And this is the reason why he can never make use of all of the powers he possesses, and why he always lives in only a small part of himself. The work of the Enneagram is to help you claim your power in such a way that you are living in your whole self. He describes the Enneagram as a fundamental hieroglyph of and a universal language that will help us to understand ourselves more fully. He says, speaking in general, it must be understood that the Enneagram is a universal symbol. All knowledge can be included in the Enneagram, and with the help of the Enneagram, it can be interpreted. So this is the work of the Enneagram. It is both an ancient symbol and also a modern symbol. So how do we work with the Enneagram? Let's just talk about that briefly. There are 3 ways that I like to work with the Enneagram. And actually, maybe this is a good moment for us just to take a look at our symbol that we will be using on our journey. Thank you very much, Vince. So take a little look at this symbol just to acquaint yourself with the Enneagram. The actual symbol essentially are the white lines right in the very first circle. And the Enneagram is the circle. The circle represents the law of 1, our unity. There's a triangle in there, which goes from 9 to 3 to 6. This is the number 3, the number of manifestation, synthesis, antithesis, and working essentially with a positive and a negative and a reconciling force. We'll talk more about that in a bit. And then we also have this hexag sign in there, which is the law of 7, which is the law of transformation. So unity, manifestation, and transformation. But take a little look at this symbol. You'll be really familiar with it by the time we finish this journey together. But one way to work with the Enneagram is to work with the Enneagram of personality, in which we are really learning to work with our persona as such. And the idea is that the whole of the Enneagram exists in you. Each completed whole, each cosmos, each organism, each plant is an Enneagram, said Gurdjieff. So all of the Enneagram exists in you. You're not just a bit of the Enneagram, or it's not just that a bit of the Enneagram is in you. This whole play of all of these numbers, these universal laws, are at work in you. And I want you to imagine that the Enneagram is introducing you to 9 types of people who represent the human family, and they are holding hands in a circle. And the Enneagram is going to help you identify your basic drives. It's going to help you to meet your fears. It's going to help you address the source of your suffering that you carry over your heart. And it's also going to help you fundamentally learn how to think in a way that your thinking is more aligned with the universal laws of life. The Enneagram is not typing you as such. The essence of who you are is untypable. Your soul has so much mystery to it. Your soul has no nationality. There's no blood group there. There's no skin color. You can't type your soul. So the Enneagram isn't typing you as such. What the Enneagram is doing, though, it's showing how you function in the world. I like to think of the Enneagram type more as an Enneagram style. It's showing you the operating system of your ego and how you have a default in a way on how you think and perceive, how you relate, and how you behave. You know, when you think about it, each morning when we wake up, we have an unconscious program working already that allows our nervous system to perform without us having to make it happen. Yeah, some animals like dolphins have to consciously breathe. We don't have to consciously breathe. Yeah, it's automated for us. Well, in a similar sort of way, actually on a feeling level and a thinking level, much of what we do is already automated. Now, that's very helpful for functioning, but when it comes to growing and to really waking up, that's when we want to be able to take a look at the operating system of our ego and make sure that we're not behaving, as Gurdjieff says, as machines, unconscious, unfeeling, unthinking, going through our day in a manic, busy, and hyperactive way without any real consciousness, any real presence, and any real capacity to love and be loved. We're making sure, with the help of the Enneagram, that we're going to wake up, that we're not going to play small, that we're going to connect to a universal energy, a universal power, and a universal purpose. That's the great work. But for now, if anybody asks, what type are you? You can reply, I'm untypable. Thank you very much. But if you're asked what type is your ego's operating system, you might say something like, my personality is an Enneagram type 3. So you have the style of 3. Learning how the persona works is super, super helpful, because eventually the great work on the spiritual path is for the persona to become an instrument for the soul. That's the work. Another way of working with the Enneagram is to see that the 9 numbers are essentially here to show you a path of growth. So the numbers of the Enneagram aren't meant to define you, they're here to guide you. And we can take 9 pathways of growth. Now, in the program Spiritual Growth and the Enneagram, which Caroline and I did, we went through the 9 journeys of growth, which we can all learn from. And that program's still available for you if you haven't taken that program. So the other way to work with the Enneagram is to work with the Enneagram of points. And it's to imagine that these 9 these 9 points on the Enneagram are like 9 meditation seats. So now the Enneagram becomes like a mandala with 9 meditation seats on it. And these meditation seats are an opportunity for us to sit, to be still, and to deepen our inquiry with a particular point of focus. So we could take, for example, Enneagram and relationships, or Enneagram and parenting, or Enneagram and leadership, or Enneagram and healing racism, or Enneagram and the Christ. Really, you can take any focus you like and work with it. And of course, this time we're going to be looking at Enneagram and purpose. So these are 3 ways to work with the Enneagram. One, helping us to become more conscious. And Caroline says over and over in her great works that that our power of choice is what really makes the difference. The persona by itself is automated. It doesn't really have many choices. But when we bring consciousness to our persona, that's when we can make healthy choices. And so we can work with the 9 personality types of the Enneagram. We can see it as 9 journeys of growth. Imagine 9 doors, 9 doorways of growth. And then also these 9 meditations, or if you like, 9 lenses through which to look at the same subject. Early on in my work, one of the projects that I worked on was Dove and the Real Beauty campaign. There we took a look at beauty through the 9 lenses of the Enneagram, and we arrived at a much more robust appreciation and understanding of what true beauty is that way. This time it's purpose in the Enneagram. Purpose in the Enneagram really is one of my all-time favorite courses to teach. It feels new and fresh for me every time. I've taught it a number of times in Assisi in Italy, also in Findhorn in Scotland, here also in London, which is where I am today, and then of course now here as well, online. So all very, very exciting. Let's just pause for a moment as well as we sort of settle into our journey on living a purpose-centered life. And I want to tell you just a little bit more about what I see as the original purpose of the Enneagram. Why does the Enneagram really properly even exist? And I'd say to you, I'm going to focus on 4 Greek words for you. I've actually just come back from teaching the Enneagram in Greece, so I'm feeling nice and full and overflowing with inspiration from that journey. And so here are 4 Greek words for you to consider, words from ancient Greek. And the first one is gnosis, and in particular, a type of gnosis, which is all to do with knowing ourselves, self-knowledge. Now, that ancient Greek aphorism, know thyself, is the first of the 3 Delphic maxims that are inscribed on a column in the forecourt of the Temple of Apollo in Delphi. Socrates is generally thought to have said, to know thyself is the beginning of wisdom. And the Enneagram is in helping us to know how our persona works, but also to help us have a greater appreciation for our psyche and how our psyche works. So in the Enneagram, we're going to be learning about the heart of who we really are, and also the intelligence of the heart and how that affects our relationship to purpose. We'll also be exploring how our mind works. One of the questions I like to ask people every now and then is, who taught you how to think? Do you know who taught you how to think? Who has shown you how to think? The philosopher Heidegger said one of the most thought-provoking questions in our modern age is or one of the most thought-provoking challenges rather in our modern age is that we're still really learning how to think, and that actually most of us are borrowing our thinking from everybody else. We haven't really learned to think for ourselves. With the help of the Enneagram and with self-knowledge, we're also learning to understand our innate spirituality and to embody our spirituality in such a way that we can experience heaven whilst on earth. How do we find our purpose? Well, it comes from self-knowledge. And the greater our self-knowledge is, the clearer we will become on what purpose means to us. So gnosis is the first word. The second Greek word is metanoia, which is a word really for transformation. And this is where the persona really becomes an instrument for a greater presence, a greater power, and a universal purpose. In the journey of metanoia, of transformation, we grow in such a way that eventually we live a guided life, like Arjuna did in the Bhagavad Gita. We receive wisdom, as Moses did. We are enlightened, like the Buddha. We are anointed, like Jesus. And we experience blessedness, like Muhammad. So there is a metanoia, a transformation that happens in our journey. This is, I like to think of the metanoia as the change that changes everything, and the change that will bring you greater clarity and appreciation for what your purpose is in the world. The purpose that is yours, but also remember the purpose that you share with humanity, and that is also part of a universal purpose too. Another word in Greek that I want you just to make a note of for now in your notebooks is anthropos, realizing your true potential, or if you like, awakening your divine potential. Anthropos, being a whole human being. This might be a good moment to talk about Carl Jung's work and his path of individuation. He saw that it was the work of every human being to individuate, to become their full self, not just that small independent ego, but a self that's connected to humanity and to the whole of creation. Individuation is about connecting your limited self with your unlimited self. And the goal is to experience yourself as fully human and fully divine. So in other words, healthy ego and a clear experience of your soul and your soulfulness. Okay, so those the first three Greek words: gnosis, an understanding of ourselves, which is where purpose comes from. An understanding of our purpose comes from. A metanoia, the journey of purpose and the changes we're going to make along the way that are going to help us to live a guided life and to be anointed and blessed so we can fulfill our purpose. And then anthropos, along the way, being fully human and fully divine, so that we can eventually, one more word, teleology, we can eventually fulfill our purpose, or if you like, our sacred contract here on earth. How do we work with the Enneagram? Well, if you've never come across the Enneagram before and this is your first time, I would recommend taking some sort of a test. And I particularly recommend the RETI test, R-H-E-T-I, RETI test from the Enneagram Institute. If you haven't read a book before on the Enneagram, I'd recommend Wisdom of the Enneagram by Don Riso and Russ Hudson. That's Wisdom of the Enneagram. And of course, the other way to do it is to take a course just like this. All right, now that's the Enneagram. And I'm going to pause there because the Enneagram is like the microscope and the telescope that we're going to be using to explore purpose. But our central theme isn't really the Enneagram, it's purpose. And we're going to draw on a few books along the way. And one of them is very much Sacred Contracts Awakening Your Divine Potential by Caroline, which I've been rereading in preparation for this program. Also, another one of Caroline's books, Archetypes. Who Are You? As well. And I'll explain the importance of this book and also an understanding of archetypes for our journey. And then, as Caroline mentioned, right up at the top of class 1, I'll also be referring to my new book, Higher Purpose, How to Find More Inspiration, Meaning, and Purpose in Your Life, which is just out. There is actually a chapter in this book entirely on the Enneagram. It's easy to find, by the way, because it's called the Enneagram chapter. Nice and clear subject title for you there. And in that chapter, I take us on a walk around the circle of the Enneagram and introduce you to 9 meditations on the Enneagram. So this is just out, and I would love it if you could get yourself a copy of this book and read that chapter as part of the work that we do in this particular program. So let's talk a little bit about purpose. And when I was putting together this book, I decided to offer it in 4 parts, rather like a symphony. And part 1 is called The Call, and how we respond to that sense of calling, which we're really going to explore across the whole of this program. How do you recognize your calling? That's part 1. Part 2 is the path, being on the path of purpose. Where are you on your path of purpose? And then part 3 is the ordeal. So the challenges of being on a path of purpose, of which there are many. And then part 4 is the victory, how living our purpose becomes a gift that we offer to everybody in our lives. So over the last 30 years or so, I've coached and mentored people on how to find their purpose, how to recognize what inspires them, to follow their joy, to do more of what they love, and to contribute to a greater purpose that is happening in the world at this time. And I've been very lucky to work with some wonderful teachers along the way, like Caroline, and also some of our friends here at Parallel Reflections, like Andrew Harvey and also Matthew Fox. I've also been lucky enough to spend time and to work with some truly inspiring people like Oprah Winfrey, Louise Hay, Wayne Dyer, Daniel Ladinsky, the poet, and Maya Angelou as well, who I interviewed 3 times. For many years now, I've given talks and masterclasses on leading with purpose. So, and I've done those mostly with leaders who work with companies, big organizations, global brands like Dove and the Real Beauty Campaign, IBM, Unilever. I'm with Unilever actually again just later this week, actually looking at purpose in the Enneagram. Virgin, Google, lots of schools, universities, public health agencies, government bodies, environmental organizations, and on it goes. So really combining leadership and purpose. I've also led a number of spiritual retreats on living your purpose. And as I've already mentioned, in particular, Assisi, the home of St. Francis and St. Clare. I'm going to very much focus on St. Francis and St. Clare on this program at different stages in our journey. I call St. Francis my patron saint of purpose. And I think of St. Clare as my patron saint of vision. I also host journeys for small groups of people who I personally coach and mentor on living this purpose-centered life, this phrase that I want you to think about, living a purpose-centered life. Every year I run a Success Intelligence Mastermind program where I work with 18 people or so on living a purpose-centered life. I do that every year. I'll be doing that again in 2023. I also do another mastermind next year. It's Golden Thread, the Golden Thread Mastermind. That's normally for people who have already taken my masterminds. But I just want to give you a flavor of how much this subject means to me and how important it is. And in the book Higher Purpose, I start by just really saying in the introduction that for 10 years I hosted a talk radio show called Shift Happens. This was for Hay House Radio. And each week I'd focus on a specific theme. And we quickly worked out that the most popular shows had the word purpose in the title. And even when there wasn't purpose in the title, the most common question that I was asked by my callers in over 500 shows was by far and away this one: how do I find my purpose? Everybody is looking for a purpose, and yet many of us struggle and find it difficult to find our purpose. Why is that? Well, we'll be exploring that through the 9 lenses of the Enneagram. But just for now, I'm going to share with you a phrase which is called purpose anxiety. Purpose anxiety. So this is a little bit of sociology for you. In a recent piece of social research states that the vast majority of people, and this is a quote, the vast majority of people crave a sense of purpose in life, but nearly always encounter purpose anxiety because their search process, they encounter purpose anxiety during their search process, and no matter the searcher's age. That's important, I think, just to take that in for a moment. It's not that we only experience anxiety early on in our life. It's that we can experience this at any stage of our life journey. One particular researcher, Larissa Rainey, defines purpose anxiety as collective forms of negative emotions, this is her words, which lead to frustration, depression, anger, low self-esteem, a loss of hope, stress, when we're struggling to find our life purpose. Carl Jung said that man cannot stand a meaningless life. Yeah. So we may experience purpose anxiety at any point in our life. It could happen early on in life when we're starting out, like at school or at college, or perhaps later in our 20s, around the Saturn return, which is when many of us start to think more deeply about the meaning of life, and we begin to review our values, our relationships, our career choices, our spiritual path. This purpose anxiety can be triggered by a life event, sometimes something very happy, like a marriage proposal, or the birth of a child, or the starting of a new job, or of a new creative enterprise. On the other hand, it can also be triggered by the end of a relationship, the death of a loved one, a health challenge, a bout of depression, a redundancy, your children leaving the nest, or even retirement. And then again, of course, purpose anxiety can be triggered by something global, like an ecological disaster, like the one that's happening right now, an economic recession, a pandemic, an energy crisis, or a war. Purpose anxiety can strike, I think, at any time in your life, and you're never too young or too old to experience it. And essentially, it's the fear that you do not have a purpose, or that you have lost your purpose and you're never going to really find your true purpose. Often I get asked the question, what if I don't have a purpose? This is one of the big fears behind purpose anxiety. And I always like to say to people, you have a purpose, but you may not have a clear awareness of your purpose. For whatever reason, you might not be clear about it right now. So you may not have an awareness of your purpose. You have a purpose, but you may not have an awareness of your purpose right now. Similarly, you have a purpose, but you may not have an appreciation for your purpose. Maybe you're not really honoring the effect you have in the world. Maybe you're not honoring the gifts that you give so freely in the world. You're not honoring your presence in the world. Maybe it's that you have a purpose, but you haven't had the necessary schooling on how to recognize your purpose. And of course, also, I believe you have a purpose, but maybe you're avoiding your purpose. Why would you avoid your purpose? Maybe it's because you think it's too big for you, that you're not worthy of it, or that you're not ready. We're going to deal with all of this as we go on this journey. Okay. Where I do want to really start is with this idea that in each and every one of us is a deep, abiding purpose. I do believe, honestly, that each and every one of us is born with a purpose, and that this purpose is is very, very big. It connects us to the heart of who we are. It connects us to humanity. It connects us to the universe. It's so big that sometimes, and so close that we can't often see it. This is a story from the introduction to the book. On my first pilgrimage to India, I remember squeezing into a 2-seat rickshaw with my friend and heading into Delhi city center. We were stopped at a red light at a busy intersection, surrounded by huge trucks, buses, cars, and motorbikes, when suddenly an elephant appeared from nowhere and stuck its head inside our tiny carriage. "Oh my God, an elephant!" I shouted. "Where?" said my friend. "What do you mean, where?" I shouted back. Its long grey trunk was sniffing at our shoes. "I can't see it," he said. "Right here," I shouted. "Oh my God, an elephant!" he shouted in turn. "How could you not see it?" I asked. "It was so close, I couldn't see it," he said. So your purpose is bigger than you can see sometimes. It's bigger than your ego. It's bigger than you take yourself to be. Your purpose doesn't belong only to you. It is part of a bigger picture, and you must adjust your sights to see your purpose in its true glory. This sense of a deep, abiding purpose is something that so many of the great wisdom traditions acknowledge, and some of the greatest spiritual teachers that have ever walked this path have also taught us about. For example, in Higher Purpose, I share the work of Rudolf Steiner. Rudolf Steiner was this great mystic and philosopher who's influenced us in so many ways. He gave us biodynamic farming, for example, Steiner schools, Waldorf schools. Rudolf Steiner said that each and every one of us has a pre-birth intention. This is his phrase, a pre-birth intention. Think about that for a minute. Get a feeling for your pre-birth intention. Do you know about your pre-birth intention? A purpose has birthed you, and now you have to give birth to it too. Somebody who makes a number of appearances in Higher Purpose is Carl Jung. And let me just share with you a passage from Carl Jung here. Carl Jung said, here we go. He said that somewhere right at the bottom of one's own being, one generally does know where one should go and what one should do. But there are times when the clown we call I behaves in such a distracting fashion that the inner voice cannot make its presence felt. Carl Jung used the term vocation to describe a sense of destiny and a sense of purpose. And he described vocation as being addressed by a voice. How about that? Vocation is about being addressed by a voice. He says, anyone with a vocation hears the voice of the inner man, and he is called. What is your vocation? Whatever that vocation is, it's a calling, and fate, destiny, and synchronicity will work to help you with your vocation. Viktor Frankl wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning. And in Higher Purpose, I talk about Viktor Frankl's work with logotherapy. I first really became aware of Viktor Frankl's work when I met his nephew, Freddie Frankl. At the time, I was working at my clinic, Stress Busters. I had a Stress Busters clinic on the National Health Service in Birmingham, in the center of England. And it had been running for a couple of years. And I got a call one day from the BBC and from Pebble Mill, which was the main BBC studio in the center of the UK. And Freddie Frankel was inviting me to be his successor to a mental health phone-in that he had hosted for a number of years. And when I met up with Freddie Frankel, that's when I really got to know about his uncle's work, and in particular, the book first, Man's Search for Meaning, but then also the work of Viktor Frankl's, which is called logotherapy. This is considered the third Viennese school of psychoanalysis and psychology. The first school was the school of Freud. Freud's work was about the will to pleasure. And the will to pleasure was this idea that really humans want as much pleasure as we can handle, and we want to avoid pain as much as possible. After Freud, there was the next school, which was Alfred Adler's school. And Alfred Adler focused on the will to superiority. And his idea was that human beings want to feel good about themselves, and we want to feel superior and not inferior. The third school was Viktor Frankl's logotherapy. And Viktor Frankl really, I think, changed the game entirely. He said, yeah, pleasure, I get it. Superiority, yeah, I sort of get it. But actually, the primary driver that human beings have is the will to meaning. We want to live a meaningful life. And in order to live a meaningful life, we must find a meaning for the suffering that we encounter. And we must also find a meaningful life that is beyond suffering and that takes us into loving and being the most loving person that we can be. So Viktor Frankl has been a big influence on my life. And then one more person I want to mention, well, two more, I think. One more for now is Joseph Campbell and the work of the hero's journey. And Joseph Campbell's work on the hero's journey has had a big impact on my life. I've taught the hero's journey in leadership circles for many, many years now. I've done a mastermind on the hero's journey as well. And Joseph Campbell said that the big question is whether you're going to be able to say a hearty yes to your adventure. The big question is whether you are going to be able to say a hearty yes to your adventure. So this is the hero's journey, and I'll talk more about that as we go. One more person I'm going to mention is Caroline. Caroline and her work on the sacred contract. Caroline says this about the sacred contract. In a sacred contract, an individual and the divine commit to a mission that promises to expand the individual's spiritual consciousness, as well as further the expression of the divine on earth. She also says, in a sacred contract, the divine guarantees that all materials or energy that are essential to the completion of your task will be provided. These provisions can include anything from receiving necessary earthly capital to being guided into certain relationships or developing an illness. And one more piece from Caroline for now. By coming to know your mission, you can live your life in a way that makes best use of your energy. And when you are working well with your energy, you are also making the best expression of your personal power. And I call this living in accord with your sacred contract. So once again, I'm just dropping in some seeds here for you now. We're talking about your pre-birth intention, your vocation, your will to meaning, your hero's journey, and your sacred contract. All of this is going to help you to live a purpose-centered life. Now, when people ask me the question like, how do you find your purpose? I always say that, you won't find your purpose if you're not paying attention to your life. So we're going to do an exercise now, which is really the starting point for our whole journey. To find your purpose, you have to pay attention to your life. You have to go to the Holy Church of Noticing. The Holy Church of Noticing. This is a phrase that my wife Holly uses in one of her poems. I like the sound of it. The Holy Church of Noticing. To find your purpose, you must visit the Holy Church of Noticing. A lot of people talk about like looking for your purpose. Looking for your purpose makes it sound like it's not here. What I'm asking you to do is to pay attention, to notice, and to recognize that your purpose is already with you, rather like that elephant that was sniffing around in the rickshaw in that story that I told you earlier on. So we're going to pay attention to your life, not the one you hope to live one day or even the one you used to live. No, I'm asking you to pay attention to the life that's happening right now. And here's the first exercise. I would like you to complete this sentence for me as I give it to you. And first, just to prepare for this exercise, I'd like you to tune in to a sense of meaning, purpose, and inspiration. And with pen and paper ready, I'd like you to jot down your answer to this question. In the last 7 days, tell me when you have felt most on purpose and when your life has felt really meaningful. So I want you to get a sense of when you felt most on purpose and your life has felt really meaningful. And to break this down a little bit, I'm going to just do it like this with you. I'm going to ask you to complete this sentence. In the last 7 days, I felt most on purpose when, and complete that sentence. In the last 7 days, I felt most on purpose when. In the last 7 days, I felt most on purpose when. In the last 7 days, I felt most on purpose when. Take a deep breath and pay attention to your life. In the last 7 days, life felt really meaningful when. In the last 7 days, life felt really meaningful when. In the last 7 days, I felt really connected to my purpose when. In the last 7 days, I experienced a deep sense of meaning when. One more time. In the last 7 days, I felt most on purpose when. Okay, So this is our first exercise, and it's an exercise we're going to return to over and over again. It is my experience that when we do an exercise like this, many people honestly have no idea where they were in the last week. They have no recollection of what happened in the last week. Last week is ancient history. They've got no idea where they were, no idea what they were up to. It's all gone. And there are many reasons for that, but partly it's because we do live unconsciously. And we are often manic, busy, and hyperactive, and we don't digest our lives fully. And also the persona is so in charge that we're not always fully present and appreciative of how we are living our purpose day by day. Yeah, that's part of it. There's more to it than that. But just to say, this is an exercise that actually I think gets easier to do the more you do it. And one of the things I'd like you to consider is I'd like you to keep a purpose journal for this class where you really do focus every day on making 5 entries on when you felt on purpose and when life has felt meaningful. So on purpose and a feeling of like deep meaningfulness. Okay. And this will be how we will recognize our sense of purpose. As we go through the Enneagram classes, we'll get more and more into this as we go. Okay. Now, I also want to give you a bit more to do. Okay, but that's our primary exercise for today. I'm going to give you some more things that I want you to think about. So first up, I want you to really think about your sacred contract. What is your sacred contract with life? I want you to imagine that in the back of your mind, beneath a pile of thoughts, you have made a sacred contract with life. You can imagine it. I'm very happy for you to imagine it because imagination is how we speak with God. Everybody knew that before the Enlightenment. And I want you to visualize it, imagine it, dream it, bring it, have your sacred contract arrive from now on in your dreams and show up on billboards as you're walking down a street. Have your sacred contract show up in songs that you listen to on the radio. Have your sacred contract show up in books, in conversations with friends. Just invite your sacred contract, your pre-birth intention, your higher purpose to make an appearance in your life now more than ever before. Say yes to your purpose, because your purpose is really always saying yes to you. Okay. But I really want you to see if you can articulate your sacred contract with life. What is your, if you like, your vow, your promise, what you came here to do, if you like. So that's number one. What is your sacred contract? Secondly, I'd like you to be thinking about your life question. Okay. Is there a particular question that you have at the moment that is having an influence on your relationship to purpose? What is the question you are asking yourself in your life right now? Yeah. We come into the world full of questions, don't we? Early on in the book, I tell the story of, I'll read it to you. As a young boy, I remember being fascinated by one of my parents' possessions, an antique world globe, 12 inches in diameter with a mahogany wood stand. The globe piqued my curiosity about life, and I'd ask Mum and Dad big questions like these. Who made the world? What is the world for? What are we really doing here? And I loved to spin the globe around and round. It was one of my favorite toys. It's not a toy, Dad kept telling me. It certainly looked like a toy to me. Yeah. So we arrive with questions for sure. And my work as a teacher of inquiry is about helping people to live with these questions. Miller Mayer said, big questions, life questions, have to be answered fully with your whole life and not just mentally on the back of an envelope. So what is your life question? What is that question you are asking yourself right now? In particular, Rilke, the poet Rilke, makes a number of appearances throughout this book. And Rilke, in his conversations with the young poet Franz Xavier Capus, in The Young Poet, have you read that book? So it's called Letters to a Young Poet by Rilke. This is a series of conversations between Rilke and Capus. And in that book, he says this, he says, I want to beg you as much as I can. Be patient towards all that is unsolved in your heart. And try to love the questions themselves, the questions you are asking about life. Yeah. Do not now seek the answers which cannot be given you because you would not be able to live them. And the point is to live everything. Live the questions now. In other words, live with the question you most want to ask. And perhaps you will then gradually, without noticing it, live along some distant day into the answer. What is that question that is really guiding you at the moment? Let me take you on a short walk around the Enneagram for a moment. At type 1, one of the questions we will often ask is, how can I make a difference? And how can I make the world a better place? At point 2, we might ask a question like, what is my gift? How can I make a contribution to the world? How can I serve? At point 3, we can ask a question like, what am I doing here? What am I here to do? What is my work? At point 4, we may ask in particular a question like, who am I? And how shall I express myself in an authentic way? Point 5, why do I have a life? Why is there anything at all? This is a question that many philosophers have grappled with. Why is there something rather than anything? Yeah. Heidegger called this the most fundamental question of metaphysics. How do you live why? You know, one of the traps of why is that we say to life, I'm not going to start living until I know why I'm here. But the point is, you have to start living. And the more you live, then you'll find out why you're here. At point 6, what is my soul's calling? How should I live? At point 7, what path shall I take? And how can I live a happy and fulfilled life? Point 8, how shall I live knowing that I will die? And at point 9, how will I show up for my life? How do I want my presence to be felt? What is my activism? So I'm asking you to really think about the question that you are living with right now. And the point of a question, the purpose of a question is really to connect you to guidance and to inspiration and to give your life direction. I also want you to be thinking about the archetype that influences you, that may somehow be inhibiting you right now, but ultimately that inspires you somehow as well. Carl Jung really gave us archetypes to consider. And Caroline describes archetypes as your energy guides to your highest potential. What is the archetype that is showing up in your life right now? During the coronavirus, one of the archetypes was the crown and what it means to be crowned. Maybe is the queen or the king showing up in your life right now. Maybe it's the caregiver or the lover, or the hero, or the creative, or the fashionista, or the intellectual, or the sage, or the guardian, or the seeker, or the jester, or the rebel, or the ruler, or the saint? What archetype is really showing up for you at the moment? The advocate, perhaps, or the Christ. Carl Jung called the Christ the greatest archetype that humanity has. If we refer once again to Joseph Campbell's work for a moment, what hero truly inspires you in your life? If I was to ask you to name a hero, somebody you really think of as a hero, someone who really, really inspires you, what would you say? What is that hero that makes you want to be even more of your real self, your true self? In Higher Purpose, there's a section here called the hero myth. Joseph Campbell says a hero is someone who has given his or her life to something bigger than oneself. The hero is an archetype, a big idea that lives in your psyche and in the collective mind of every culture. It's with you for your whole life, right up to your last breath. And its main aim is to get you to say yes to a hero story, traditionally called a hero myth, that inspires you to fulfill your purpose. So what sort of a hero do you want you to be? Joseph Campbell identified a number of heroes. There's the hero of the warrior, the one that takes on a crusade, who fights a good fight. There's the hero of the lover. There's the hero of the saint or of the world redeemer. Yeah. What sort of a hero do you most want to be, or are you most inspired by in your life? Okay, I'm going to give you 2 more things to consider. This is all for your journaling over the next few weeks. So point 5 is, what is the personal myth or story that's really inspiring you in the world right now? Think about the world and the stories in the world right now. What story has your attention? What story most interests you? What story do you most want to be part of somehow? Yeah. The poet Muriel Rukeyser says, the universe is made of stories, not of atoms. Yeah. And in Higher Purpose, I share this from Carl Jung. He said, the most important question anyone can ask is, what myth am I living? Yeah. A myth is a great story that you want to be part of, a love story, a hero journey, a renaissance, a reformation, a good deed that you want to do for the world, yeah, and a higher purpose that you want to give yourself fully to. Jung wrote, I asked myself, what is the myth you are living? And I found that I did not know. So I took it upon myself to get to know my myth. And I regarded this as the task of tasks. I simply had to know what unconscious or pre-conscious myth was forming me. Yeah, it was forming me. So what is that story that that is inspiring you, that is calling you, that is asking you to play a part in? And then one more piece will be around your inner work. What is the inner work you're being asked to do right now so that you can say yes to your purpose? What is the inner work that you're being asked to do so that you can recognize your purpose more fully? What is the inner work that you're being asked to do that's going to help you appreciate your purpose more? To say yes to your purpose, to stop resisting it, delaying it, avoiding it, and really, really saying yes to it. Okay. This is our great work. Yeah. And today we are laying the platform down for living your higher purpose and recognizing your purpose as you go. So with that, I'm just going to now invite Caroline to join us.
Oh, that was a jam-packed beginning launch. Well done, you.
Yeah, I
Well
think we're gonna.
done.
I imagine we're gonna want to watch that one again and again. But that's the joy of this platform, Caroline, isn't it? Is that we can sow seeds at the beginning of the journey like this.
Absolutely, and well done, you did. I think it's vitally important to give to make the whole archetype of purpose as fluid as you can. And I have a few thoughts I'd like to contribute to just add my 2 cents to your huge presentation.
Thank you, Caroline.
So, what I would like to do, everybody, is to add my own experience with purpose, because as dealing with sacred contracts through the years, I've had so many people pursue the idea of wanting to find their quote sacred contract as if it's one thing, as if it is one thing that you are looking at. And in that same vein, it's like the cautionary one purpose. I have a purpose, a single purpose. And no, 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 no. That is not my. If I could just kind of stretch that idea a little bit, because I would look at my life and say exactly what was my one purpose. Was it to write Anatomy of the Spirit, or was it to teach, or what? What? How, purpose is not task driven.
Mhm.
That a task might include that you might do a task, but the idea that you think I want you to think of your purpose as like your contracts, as a reaching an altitude of insight where you recognize this is an obligation. This is a soul obligation. This is part of why I was born. This is part of my charism. This is part of my soul. And I think in order for me to get into this teaching more effectively, I'm going to start by first of all saying that we as people of the West are driven by practicality, the God of practicality, the God of insecurity, the God of so therefore my purpose must be financial. My purpose must be visual. My purpose must be tactile. My purpose must be something I can see and measure, and it has to bring me security, and it has to be something that I like, and I have to be fulfilled, and all this nonsense that we load up when we think of purpose. And and then there's my higher purpose on top of my purpose. And it just goes on and on and on. But it's formed out of the archetypal roots that purpose comes from finding a safe passage on the planet. I have to find a safe passage that is overlooked by God. And if I find that safe passage overlooked by God, then it's a safe passage. And none of the bad things that happen to ordinary people will happen to me. And that is part of this mythology that goes with if I'm a good person, bad things won't happen to me. That is, well, I got to find my purpose because it's my safe passage, you see, because then I will be safe and bad things won't happen and my money will be safe and blah, blah, blah. And I'm here to tell you that all of that is superstitious thinking. It's just superstitious thinking. And that the route in which we evolve in our consciousness is like we start out with a job because we have to find some way to feed ourselves. And a job is the powerless task. You're hired by someone else and you're told what to do. Eventually, as you mature, go to school, develop skills, go to craftsmanship, learn a craft, you become a career person. And the shift in career is that you now ascend to having a voice in what you're doing. When you have a job, you don't. You're assigned to go put the boxes up, go do this, go do that. So you are powerless. So when you think of purpose in the job powerless state, you will automatically from that position look up and think purpose must be a way out of this. And it must be a way to have stuff. And it must be a way to accumulate. It's my path of accumulation. It's my path of getting more stuff. When you get a career, when you emerge and you develop and you become a co-participant in the events of your life because you've developed more of yourself. You start engaging in choice at a level that the job market doesn't afford you. You don't have choice when you're just an employee with very minimal skills. And but when you have a career, and by this I mean symbolically, I mean when you have thinking apparatus, when you have developed your sense of in your interior self, you have more consciousness to work with, and the universe has more to work with you. It can work with you because you've got more wires connected. So at this point, you you are able to consider that maybe purpose is not stuff driven. Maybe purpose is power driven. Maybe the higher purpose has to do with my capacity to transform something, not to acquire it, but to transform. To transform, like become a human alchemist. The manner in which I move this situation to that situation. Robert said, "How can I make a difference?" But add to that in this moment. Every single second, every single question. What is my work in this situation? How do I express myself in this moment? Every single question Robert asks, if you add in this moment, in this situation, purpose is not out there. It is the living vessel that you are living in this moment. How do I bring transformation to this moment? How do I transform this from a atmosphere that is dripping with anger and rage to something that is more compassionate? Because that's my purpose. My purpose as someone who is skilled at seeing through things. I can see through things. I can perceive who's angry. I can read archetypes. What is my purpose? To use all of that to transform alchemy from something that is potentially dark into the light. So we move from job to career to the third word Robert used, vocation. Vocation or calling, to be called. To be called into becoming a vessel of light. That's your highest purpose. And you purpose out in every single breath you take. In every you don't say, well, I have to look at my life and find it. You become it. You become it. You bring your purpose into every moment. You infuse a situation with light. You shine your light upon this situation and you transform it. You let your purpose do the work. That's the work because you get what consciousness is. Am I carrying on too much?
No, not at all. You don't find your purpose, you become it. Oh
Yes.
my God. Come on.
You don't
That's
find
it.
your purpose, you become
No,
it, you evolve. That's
exactly.
the whole point of evolution is if as a job you're looking for it, where is it? Where is it? As a
Yeah.
career, you begin to sniff out, maybe there's something more to me than
Yeah.
meets the eye. And
Yeah.
then you discover you are a vessel of transformation. You're a bloody alchemist. You
I,
can take a dark situation and see it clearly and contribute a higher point, a higher word. You can choose a word that diffuses a situation. And in doing that, you've converted what is potential darkness into something that is light. And you've created the highest potential in that moment, in that situation for these people. La la.
yeah, this is it. And I love how you've just given us this arc of like job, career, vocation. And
Mhm.
it's absolutely right. I think we start off in life, for example, looking for love, and then we work out that we are the love we're looking for. We're the
Precisely.
ones. Yeah.
You don't look for it, you become it.
Yes. Yeah.
Become it. How do you become this? How do
Mm,
you take how can I make a difference in this moment? Not how can I make a difference by just being me because I'm just so special. Shut up. You're not special.
mm,
You have to go out there and
yeah.
discover the specialness of creation and contribute that and decide I can convert a situation that is really difficult into something that isn't because I that's my purpose. My purpose is that's the kind of alchemist I am.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, Caroline, thank you. And I think, what I wanted to do with higher purpose as well, and why I think the Enneagram is so helpful with this is this emphasis on my purpose. you know, that leaves out the shared purpose, the collective purpose, the
Mhm.
universal purpose. You know, and I think so many people experience this purpose anxiety because we're trying to be special. As you say, we're using purpose almost to differentiate ourselves from the universe rather than join in with the universe.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Nothing is more special than the planet itself, than
Hmm.
life itself. And
Hmm.
the and understanding what that profound life force is that's running through you, and how to
Hmm.
harness that and decide, actually, if I change my attitude, I change the whole atmosphere in this room, and that's power,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that's purpose. To understand that is itself a purpose-driven life.
Yeah. And Caroline, when in that first exercise where I'm just literally asking people to think of the last 7 days, you know, the last 7 days, and just when did I feel most on purpose? When was I experiencing something meaningful? You know, that exercise, for me, that's all about this shift from finding to recognizing. Yeah.
Yes.
Mm.
And look at the difference just in those 2 words.
Mm-hmm.
Find, but to recognize something is to see it with your heart.
Mm-hmm.
You find
Yeah.
it with your eyes, but you see it with your heart.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
get it. You get it.
Yes, you
Get it.
do.
I recognize what this is, and
Yeah.
wow, you know?
And I think you feel it in your heart, and also I'd say as well, it brings, there's a sense of aliveness that I think that comes with purpose and meaningfulness. We'll explore this more. You know, the Enneagram is one of those models which acknowledges that we experience life through our body, through our heart, through our mind. There's an aliveness that also I think comes with purpose and meaning. It can't be explained intellectually, but you just feel completely alive when you're doing something that's on purpose.
Well, and I think when you're doing something in which you realize I'm using some capacity in me that feels like it's the best of me.
Hmm.
It's the best of me.
Yeah.
And to give someone or something, like when I'm teaching, I feel like I'm giving my students the best of me.
Hmm.
And there are so many times, Robert, where I've been sicker than all get out
Yeah.
before a lecture, sicker than a dog. And but I had to do the lecture.
Yeah.
And I would get to the stage and think, I am just I want to go home. I am so ill. And
Hmm.
then the moment class starts, I just kick in and I'm just fine
Yeah.
for the duration of that.
Hmm.
Because my whole focus is always on I've got to um, teach. But I think like when it comes to contract or purpose, it's not enough for me to think, and I really got this, that I have a teacher archetype, and everybody who knows me knows that.
Mm.
But the contract I have,
Mm.
like higher purpose, is with knowledge. It's
Yeah.
with knowledge, and I think you share some of that,
Hmm.
if not a lot of it. It's a contract to absorb knowledge, and then that is actually a contract with truth.
Yeah.
Because where we buzz the most is in shining that and passing it on to students, which is why you love the Enneagram so much. It is a
Mm.
vessel of truth for you. It
Yeah.
sparkles with truth. I think
Yes,
that's why you're so
absolutely.
good at teaching it.
Yeah, that's right. I appreciate the intelligence of it. You know, that's important. I need something to be robust. I need it, you know, it can't be flaky. It's got to be robust. It's got to have those mathematical laws
And
to it.
rooted in
Rooted.
truth.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly right. Do you know, that's another thing I think often, like when people are really on purpose, and we're going to look at this in the next class, but when you're on purpose, you're not making this stuff up. You are in alignment with some sort of a lineage.
Yes.
You know, there's a lineage. I often ask people, like, especially on the Success Intelligence Mastermind, one of the first questions I ask is, who do you work for? Who do you work for? If you
Mhm,
think you only work for yourself, if you're self-employed, sorry, no, you work. Who do you work for? You're part of a lineage.
mhm.
You're part of a line, and it's good for you to have some idea about what that lineage is because you're serving it, but it's supporting you too. So
Very
who do
good.
you work for?
Excellent. Wonderful. I think the
Hmm.
questions you're posing in this wonderful workshop are so rich.
Yeah.
I really do. I tell you seriously, and I would say this if we weren't on the air, but because I deeply believe that without having an understanding of what your purpose is and how valuable you are, you the capacity to develop true self-esteem, to genuinely esteem yourself,
Mm.
is just a therapeutic effort. It doesn't actually take root.
Yeah.
It
Wow.
doesn't you don't you it's just you're just repairing wounds.
Yeah.
The true capacity to esteem yourself
Hmm.
and get the reason for which God gave you life at this time. Why am I alive now? Not just alive. Why have
Yeah.
I been assigned to be alive now in this era of profound chaos and
Hmm.
transformation?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah. Yeah. So true. It's so right. And the fact then that we think of like people like our Martin Luther Kings and our Nelson Mandelas and Gandhi who put themselves right in front of the hopelessness of humanity and were sustained by hope. And
Mhm.
you think, well, that can't come from positive thinking. That's not the ego doing positive thinking.
Right. Yeah,
That's
the
another
ego
power.
doesn't have that. That's grace.
Yeah, exactly.
That is grace sustaining someone through
Yeah.
that. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Absolutely. And I look forward, that's another reason to be doing this program at this time, I think, is that we have to be not just expressing our purpose, but being sustained by our purpose in these times,
Absolutely.
because there's enough headlines to put you off life forever right now.
Isn't that
So we need to find some other headlines that we can work with. And that's what I think these courses are all about as well. And I love that we're doing them, Caroline. And thank you to you. Thank you to everybody for a
absolutely.
great first class.
And the second class, give us the title.
Well, the second class is we're going to be at point 1 on the Enneagram, and we're going to be looking at aligning to our highest good and also serving the greater good of humanity.
Ah, I'm a 1.
Hmm.
My class.
Yeah. Yeah. I look forward to your reflections on that. And that's going to be great. But thank you,
Thank
everybody,
you.
for class 1. We've made a start and trust the journey. You've said yes to this journey, trust it. And the journey as well, I just want to say this. Sometimes we think we know how the journey will be for us, but it rarely is that way. The journey has its plan for you. So be open, available, and just available to the magic that will happen of being on this program together.
Thank you, Duan. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. See you for class 2.
Yeah. See you there.